It didn't happen like a normal attack. There were no warnings, no public threats, no visible buildup. Just one moment, silence, and the next, explosions hitting some of the most heavily protected locations in Tehran. According to reports, this wasn't a random strike. It was a highly coordinated operation involving both US and Israeli forces, something that immediately raised global tension. But what makes this even more unsettling is how precise it was. The strike didn't just hit buildings, it targeted people, top leadership, high-ranking officials, and at the center of it all, Khamenei himself, which raises the first big question. How did they know exactly where he would be? Because intelligence suggests this operation was planned weeks in advance, tracking movements, patterns, even private meetings. At one point, multiple sources indicate that several senior leaders were gathered in the same location, a rare opportunity. And somehow, that moment was chosen. Not too early, not too late, exactly when it would have the maximum impact. Even more surprising, the strike happened in broad daylight, using advanced weapons and multiple coordinated hits across the city. This wasn't just an attack, it was a message, a display of how deep intelligence networks may have penetrated, and how close external forces were able to get to the very core of Iran's leadership. But here's where things become even more mysterious. Operations like this don't just rely on satellites or technology. They rely on information, inside information. And that leads to the question no one can clearly answer. Who provided it? Because when a strike is this precise, this calculated, it suggests something far bigger happening behind the scenes, something we still don't fully see. At first, the story didn't make sense. Reports began circulating online, some claiming that Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had been targeted in a major strike. Within minutes, social media was flooded with conflicting updates, some even going as far as declaring him dead. But when you looked closer, nothing was confirmed. Because in the hours immediately after those claims, Iran's official response was very different. Iranian state media and government officials quickly denied the reports. They stated that Khamenei was safe, that he had not been harmed, and that the rumors were part of what they described as psychological warfare, an attempt to create confusion and panic. At the exact same time, other sources were saying the opposite. Unverified accounts, anonymous intelligence claims, and foreign commentary suggested something much more serious, that a high-level target may have been hit, and that information was being withheld. Two completely different versions of reality, unfolding at the same time. So which one was true? And more importantly, why does this keep happening? Because in modern conflict, information moves faster than fact. Initial reports are often incomplete. Governments release controlled statements, and unofficial sources fill in the gaps, sometimes with speculation, sometimes with misinformation, and that creates something dangerous, a gap between what's known and what's believed. Then there's the issue of timing. In high-stakes geopolitical situations, confirmation is rarely immediate. Leaders may be relocated, communication may be restricted, and official statements are often delayed, not always because something is being hidden, but because information itself is still being verified. But from the outside, that delay can look like something else entirely. It can look like uncertainty, or even concealment. And when analysts try to piece everything together, they often run into the same problem. There's no clear, independent verification. Most of what the world sees comes from official government statements, intelligence leaks, and rapidly spreading online reports, not direct, on-the-ground evidence, which leaves a gap, a space between what we're told and what we actually know. Because in situations like this, information isn't just shared, it's shaped. And when timelines shift and narratives don't align, you start asking a different kind of question. Not just what happened, but how much of the story are we really seeing? To understand why this moment shook the region, you have to understand who Khamenei really was. This wasn't just the death of a political leader. This was the removal of a figure who had been at the center of Iran's power for over 3 decades. Since 1989, Khamenei wasn't just leading, he was defining the direction of the country. Every major decision, every policy, every confrontation on the global stage carried his influence. Presidents came and went, governments shifted, but he remained. A constant presence, shaping Iran from behind the scenes and at the very top. Inside the country, his rule was closely tied to control, strict policies, limited freedoms, crackdowns on protests that, at times, turned deadly. For many, he symbolized stability. For others, repression. But his influence didn't stop at Iran's borders. Across the Middle East, his strategies shaped conflicts that stretched far beyond one nation. From proxy groups to regional alliances to tensions with global powers, Khamenei was seen as a key architect behind Iran's reach in the region. Which means his death isn't just a national event, it's a geopolitical shockwave. Because when someone holds that much power for that long, they don't just lead a system, they become the system. And when that system suddenly loses its center, it creates something far more dangerous than just uncertainty. It creates a vacuum, a space where control weakens, factions rise, and the future becomes unpredictable. Because the real impact of his death isn't just about what happened, it's about what happens next, when the man who held everything together is no longer there. Whenever something this big happens, the first question isn't just how, it's who benefits. Because in geopolitics, events like this are rarely isolated. They shift balance, they create openings, and sometimes that's exactly the point. Khamenei's death didn't just remove a leader, it removed a central figure who had been holding together a complex network of power, both inside Iran and across the region. And the moment he was gone, that structure became vulnerable. For Iran's regional rivals, this changes everything. Countries that have long opposed Iran's influence now see an opportunity, a chance to weaken its position, disrupt its alliances, and reshape the power dynamics of the Middle East. Because without a strong central authority, coordination becomes harder, decisions slow down, and internal divisions begin to surface. But it's not just external players. Inside Iran itself, different factions exist. Political groups, military leadership, religious authorities, all with their own interests. And in moments like this, those differences don't stay hidden. They grow, they compete, and sometimes they clash. Which raises another possibility. Was this strike only about removing one man, or was it about triggering something much bigger? Because a coordinated operation of this scale isn't just about precision, it's about timing, choosing a moment when the impact will ripple far beyond the target itself. And when you look at the situation now, the uncertainty, the shifting power, the rising tension, it starts to feel less like a single event and more like the beginning of something. Because when a move creates this many consequences, you have to ask, was this just an attack or a calculated step in a much larger plan? Now comes the part no one can fully predict. What happens next? In situations like this, whether it's a major security threat, a leadership scare, or even just uncertainty at the top, Iran's system is designed to respond quickly. Reports often point toward contingency planning, discussions of interim structures, mechanisms meant to ensure stability no matter what happens. On the surface, it looks like continuity, a system built to absorb shock. But behind that surface, uncertainty always exists. Because maintaining a system is one thing, replacing a figure like Ayatollah Khamenei would be something else entirely. For over 3 decades, he has not just been a leader, but the central authority, the final decision maker, the figure balancing political, military, and religious power inside Iran. And that kind of role isn't easily transferred. Which naturally leads to the question that analysts have been asking for years. What happens when that position eventually becomes vacant? Who comes next? Several names are often discussed in expert circles: senior clerics, members of the Assembly of Experts, and figures closely tied to Iran's existing power structure. But none carry exactly the same influence or the same long-established control. And that's where the real tension lies. Because succession in Iran isn't just about choosing a new leader, it's about whether the system can maintain unity during that transition. Iran's political structure includes multiple centers of power, religious leadership, elected government, military influence, particularly the key. For years, those forces have operated within a controlled balance, but transition can test that balance. History shows that moments of leadership uncertainty rarely stay quiet. They evolve, they shift, and sometimes they create space for internal differences to surface. Not necessarily chaos, but pressure. Pressure that can reshape decisions, alliances, and priorities. Which means what we're seeing, whether it's rumors, speculation, or strategic messaging, might not be the conclusion of a story, but a reminder of a much bigger question already looming in the background. A turning point that, when it eventually comes, could reshape not just Iran, but the entire region. Because when power changes hands, especially in systems built around a single central authority, the outcome is never simple. And maybe the most important question isn't just who comes next, but what kind of future emerges after them.